Welcome back, everyone. All right, let's just dive right into this. We're tackling a concept today that is absolutely deeply ingrained in our modern society, but honestly, it might be doing us a massive amount of harm. We're looking at this really toxic societal belief that working until you literally break down is somehow a badge of honor. It's what our source material calls the curse of overwork as a virtue. We're going to dismantle this idea piece by piece, and by the end of this explainer, I guarantee you're going to be looking at your own work habits in a completely new, incredibly empowering light.
Just look at this, because it brilliantly illustrates the core contradiction we're living with every single day. When a professional athlete gets injured, what happens? Fans, commentators, the media, everyone immediately scrutinizes their routine. We say, oh, they didn't manage their condition, or their rest intervals were way off. We logically view a physical breakdown in sports as a self-management failure. But switch context for a second. When an office worker grinds away, skipping meals, losing sleep, and eventually breaks down physically or mentally from overwork, the reaction is entirely different. We don't criticize their lack of self-management. No, we praise them. We treat their breakdown as this profound act of dedication. It is a massive, frankly, illogical double standard.
And you've probably heard this exact phrase before. Well, they worked so hard, it couldn't be helped. Or maybe something like, it's admirable they pushed through even if it broke them. But here's the thing. This kind of language is actually incredibly dangerous. It takes a situation that should be a massive red flag, a signal that something went terribly wrong in a person's routine, and masks it as a legendary act of heroism. When we say stuff like this, we rob the individual and everyone watching of a really valuable learning moment. If a breakdown is praised, we never step back and say, hey, how can we make sure this never happens again? We just blindly celebrate the sacrifice.
Section 1. Deconstructing Virtue and Duration.
It is so easy to trick ourselves into thinking that long-term suffering is somehow more noble. But consider this comparison. Whether you push yourself past your absolute limits for a single chaotic day, or you grind yourself down slowly over 10 entire years, the tragic end result is exactly the same. You are broken. The length of time you spend overworking doesn't magically change the biological and psychological reality of burnout. The outcome is what matters here. A breakdown is a breakdown.
In fact, long-term overwork is actually far more insidious. Because, well, when you push too hard for a decade, it kind of stops feeling like overwork. It just feels like life. You start telling yourself everyone is doing this. This is just what it takes. And that is the ultimate danger of the everyday grind. It literally dulls your internal sensors. It slowly blinds you to your own breaking point until you're just totally numb to the damage you're doing to yourself.
Section 2. The Traps of Perfection and Ambition.
Notice how we completely misunderstand a word we use every single day: perfection. We usually think of perfection as the ultimate state of having it all, right? But our source suggests the exact opposite. To achieve what society calls perfection in your work or your output, you usually have to chip away at everything else. You sacrifice your free time, your physical health, your mental peace, your relationships. By the time you reach that so-called perfect state, you haven't actually gained everything, you're left empty. You've simply let go of everything else that makes you human.
Which leads us to a very direct question for you. Does everyone actually need to have burning ambition? Because, think about it, we're taught from a very young age that to live a good life, you absolutely must be fiercely ambitious. You gotta always want to climb higher, do more, conquer the next mountain. But is that actually true for everyone?
The answer from our source material is a resounding no. Imagine a society where absolutely everyone is hyper-ambitious, relentlessly competitive, and never ever rests. That wouldn't be an inspiring place to live. It would be entirely suffocating. It is perfectly valid and actually necessary for societal balance to choose a life without that burning, all-consuming ambition. It's completely fine to just live comfortably, do your job well, and quietly enjoy the progress made by those who do choose to push those boundaries. You really don't have to be the one sacrificing your life on the altar of ambition.
Section 3. Redrawing the Lines. Compassion versus Self-Sacrifice.
It is so incredibly easy to confuse these two things. Step 1 is healthy compassion. This is human nature at its absolute best, helping others, but doing so from a surplus of energy. Your own needs are met, your foundation is secure, and you actually have extra to give. But step 2, that's where it gets dangerous. Toxic self-sacrifice. This happens when compassion becomes tangled up with the idea that your own well-being doesn't matter. You start actively destroying your own life, your sleep, your financial stability, just to be seen as helpful or reliable.
That isn't kindness, guys. It's just planting the seeds for your own collapse.
To protect yourself from that slide into toxic self-sacrifice, you need a new baseline. And I really love how simple and grounded this is. The baseline should be, as long as I can make a living and not suffer, that's enough. Just let that sink in for a second. Having this realistic standard is literally like a shield. It protects you from that constant, gnawing anxiety that tells you that you must always do more, give more, and be more. If your bills are paid and you aren't suffering, you're already succeeding.
Section 4. A new form of virtue. Practical adjustments.
Now, shifting this paradigm doesn't mean you just do nothing. It means you become smarter about your energy, exactly like an athlete. Look at these adjustments. First, if I work hard today, I relax tomorrow. Simple. Second, intentionally recover what you spent. Don't just cross your fingers and hope you feel better. Actually plan your recovery. And third, stop ignoring the small signs. Things like lingering fatigue, a sudden lack of focus, or unexplained irritability. They aren't weaknesses. They're your body's check engine light. An athlete wouldn't ignore tweaking muscle, right? Well, you shouldn't ignore a tweaking mind.
And here is an incredibly liberating truth to help you finally let go of that overwork guilt. People care about what you provide, not the stressful process of your life. Society, your clients, even your boss, they mostly care about the output. They don't actually need to judge or frankly even know about the agonizing internal life process you went through to get there. You do not need to overwork just to seek validation, because the struggle itself isn't what's valuable. The result is. So, achieve that result in the absolute healthiest way possible.
That brings us to our final and definitely most important takeaway. Read this with me. Working until you break isn't a point of pride. Stopping before you break is. That is the new definition of true self-management. Recognizing your limits, listening to your body, and having the courage to step back, recover, and live to fight another day, that is the real virtue. So, I'm going to leave you with this question to think about. Are you managing your life to build a legacy, or are you just managing it to survive your next breakdown? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Catch you next time.